This gets to an issue that I think is just kind of baffling. I have a piece up at BillMoyers.com titled The Irreconcilable Paradox of Calls to Strike Syria. And I point out that the justification for these strikes is to uphold an international norm, right? The prohibition against using chemical weapons. But there's another norm that I think is so much more important, and that's the norm toward multilateral security, that you can't just go and attack another country with the exception of self-defense or when working in concert with the international community. And I note in that piece that it's a violation of the UN Charter to even threaten to use force against another country, except in those circumstances. So when Obama gave that speech in the Rose Garden about the importance of international law, he was flouting international law. Can you make any sense of this?
No, I can't. I thought your piece was great about this. You had this great comparison where you said that the norm against chemical weapons, which came out of World War I, and the 150,000 deaths there by gassing, was, it's not that it's unimportant and that it doesn't establish an order that has benefited the world, but the norm that came out of World War II, which was the legitimacy of the international system and the UN as the only legitimate venue for the use of force by states, is a much more important international norm, and in fact it's one that it's had a much greater impact on stability throughout the world. And I think that's right on. You can't, it's really difficult to make any sense of it. Now, there have been violations, obviously, of both those norms. There have been states that have used power, that have used military force outside of the UN. The U.S. has done it several times, many times.
Of course.
And there have now been a handful of states that have used chemical weapons. And, let's take it, let's just assume for the moment that, the basic contours of intelligence reports that have come out so far, that Assad's government was responsible for the chemical attack, even if he didn't order it himself. These are repeated patterns. And I think that, your argument is sort of right, that not responding to the international norm against chemical weapons is actually less important to world stability and kind of a broader, longer picture than being unresponsive to the international norm of the legitimate use of force through the UN Security Council.
And the thing that I keep hearing, I'm just switching tacks here a little bit, is about public opinion. As you noted, this is the least popular proposed conflict for the last 20 years of Gallup polling or something like that. There's really great opposition. The most recent poll out had 51% against, 36% for, and that's even, that those polls also presume that Assad was in fact guilty, which I believe is most likely the case.
And that's even polling on limited strikes. We're not talking about a broad intervention here. We're talking about the sort of limited thing that Obama has proposed.
Exactly. But one thing that kind of gets under my craw is that the pundits keep saying, well, Americans are war weary. And, I think, well, maybe we've been through a couple of very complicated Middle Eastern conflicts with sectarian aspects, very vicious, very hard to sort out. Maybe we've actually seen that the United States is extremely bad at nation building, at governing once we've achieved our narrow military objectives. I mean, maybe we've just learned some valuable lessons from recent history rather than being just kind of exhausted.
Yeah, I think it would be nice to change the terminology on that it's, America has become war learned instead of war weary.
Right.
Because it's like, the idea of being war weary is like, maybe we'll take a little disco nap, and then when we wake up, we'll be ready to wage massive wars in the Middle East again.
Right.
Like, I think that era might be behind us, and it's not because we're like tired of it. It's because we learned some freaking lessons.
Yes, I agree.